Lord Seventh
is a priest novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 28. Jadeite's Sacrificial Stage. Although the official evening evaluation assembly only started at night, it hadn't even hit the time of the monkey when the current Hall of Orchids, Jadeite, was already surrounded inside and out. Even the top of the wall on the whole opposite street was seated up full, and the restaurant partitioned by that street was relying on the height of its building, which allowed a bit to be viewed on its top floor. It was also shut down, because, every time this happened, selling seats was more profitable than anything else. When Jing-Chi leisurely ate his meal, took Wuxia out for a stroll, then chatted on and on the whole journey, the sea of people made the latter suck in a cold breath, as he had always been a bit fearful of crowded places. "Why are so many people here?" he automatically asked. Unfortunately, the voices of the people around them were too clamorous, and Jing-Chi didn't hear him clearly. Even so, he had long since known how this would go down, and had specially brought along a few more broad-shouldered, wide-waisted imperial guards that just so happened to be here to clear the way. Fearing that they'd be separated by the crowd, he then grabbed Wuxi's hand. The autumn night was slightly chilly, the other's palms were warm, but his fingers were cold, making him jolt from the ice. The perception in his own hand was exceptionally sensitive, and it could feel that this teen's was a lot thinner than his own with slightly more slender digits, but it held the particular sense of strength that a man's would have, minor calluses at his fingertips. It wasn't like one that only used brushes. Only upon entering Jadeite with great difficulty did someone come to welcome them. Ping An handed the invitation card over, and they were eagerly invited to a private room on the second floor at once. When Jing-Chi's party came in, Zhou Zishu and He Yongxing were already there. On one side, there was Su Qingluan, who had specifically come to accompany them, and a few delicate, good-looking young women to wait upon them. "So you've come," He Yongxing said with a grin. "Brother Zishu nearly believed that you two would be refusing to show up today. Drink to the bet lost, drink." The crown prince wasn't present, nor was sage descendant Lu Shen. In a certain aspect, the few that were here could be said to be of the same kind of material, making screwing about a lot more comfortable. Jing-Chi didn't decline, rapidly accepting it and chugging it down, then sat down without a care. The taste of this floral wine is always different. Drinking a few more pots would be great. Could you ever be without me when excitement's going on, brother Yongxing? You two have come, so today is bound to be a worthwhile outing. He Yongxing happily replied. "I'll admit, Beiyuan, if you didn't take part in this night evaluation, then calling you to appreciate the utmost of pretty scenery would be in vain, too." Jing-Chi smiled, pouring himself a cup and downing it without responding. "You're a very young man. This old one's been through way more night evaluations than you've ever even heard of." At the same time, he beamingly listened as He Yongxing ecstatically pulled Wuxi to go show off to him. "Chaminette, come and look, quick. See that stage below." Following his line of sight, Wuxi saw a towering stage erected in the middle of the downstairs lobby. Its base was stocked full of flowers, and at first glance, it resembled a fresh arrangement. Connected to its side was a small flight of steps, which were a bit narrower and thinner than ordinary ones. The young woman walking up them owned an air of gracefulness. The platform was set high up, but it happened to be just tall enough so that all the guests in the private rooms above and the lobby below could see it clearly. Wuxi sized it up for a while. Looking at that shape, it looks a bit like the altar we use for making offerings to the gods. He Yongxing was caught off guard, having just momentarily forgotten that despite frequently seeing Wuxia at Jing Qi's place in ordinary times, the other party would stop talking after they both exchanged greetings. Him giving a response today was truly rare, so young Marquis he, who had something of a tendency to be a windbag, got excited. "What is your altar for?" he blurted out. "Ah." Wuxi paused. A long time later, after he Yongxing was already feeling that he wasn't going to answer, he heard him respond. "The altar is for sacrificing to the deity Gaz. Sacrificing to the gods requires use of livestock, or blood of the 5 poisonous beasts. Or, sacrificing to the ancestors." He Yongxing realized that he had asked the wrong question. Ancestors being sacrificed to have generally all been killed by enemies, Wuxi continued on expressionlessly. "For that reason, the skulls of enemies must be exhibited on the altar, and their blood must be splashed on its steps, then tread upon." He Yongxing's complexion was wretched. Jing Qi, however, nodded. "That's actually not bad," he said, in complete seriousness. "When you say it like that, I think this is a bit similar. Do you know what type of altar we have?" Wuxi asked, baffled. Jing Qi shook his head, but thought to himself, how couldn't they be the same? They're both meat-selling spots. Of course, due to Nanjiang's beliefs, those words couldn't be said out loud. Therefore, he went over to lean forward on the banister, pointing towards a couple big baskets in the corner, which were filled with flowers, as he clarified for him. "See that there? It's just begun, and someone sent flowers over. Later on, you might witness people throwing flowers onto the stage when she climbs on it. There's a specific person that will come collect them, but this doesn't mean that the ladies are competing with each other. The evening evaluation in the Hall of Orchids is primarily the word evaluation, where one looks for elegance and excitement, with harmony highly valued. If one likes, all the women are sitting in the back, so they can write a lady's name down and pass an invitation card over. If she's also willing," he grinned maliciously, his pair of peach blossom eyes gently sweeping over. "Then, there's only mandarin ducks to envy, not immortals." "Have you really never participated in the Hall of Orchids before, Junior Prince?" Zhou Zishu wondered. "Why do you know so many details about it?" Jing Qi gave a light cough. "How's that weird? Don't these gold-melting bordellos just repeat the same couple of tricks? I've never eaten pork, but I always see pigs running around." As soon as he finished, he noticed Wuxi using a "are you still going to say you're not that type of person" sort of look at him, watching him with quite some contempt. He rubbed his nose and thusly sat back down, saying nothing. Not long after, the lamps encircling the lobby were covered up, dimming the lights. Momoli of Jadeite brought out 2 young maidservants, personally coming up to pay everyone respects. The noisy men quieted down. Soon, there came young slaves carrying flowers, and they passed them out to each of the guests in turn. Beautiful women appeared on stage one by one. They made tasteful notes for conventional music, having all kinds of makeup and all sorts of allure. The guests in the upper private rooms were all relatively composed, only commenting in low voices. The lobby, however, was animated, cheers and assessments shouted out loudly. Some of what was said was extremely vulgar, and some unbearable to the ear. Wuxi watched and watched, thinking all this charming song and dance dull. He hadn't understood what Jing Qi had said at the start and only intended on coming over to take a look in person, but at this moment, he finally knew what was meant by nitpicking a woman's appearance in public. He thought of how different it was during festivals they had at home in the past, where the young women of the clan would sing and dance, even having courageous young men that seemed to admire them express their love. That was because the clansmen would look at them with kind gazes, like fathers, like brothers, like lovers, respecting them, spurred to be happy in joint with them. Unlike here. He felt those captivating women on stage to be pitiful, too, as others looked down on them, and they looked down on themselves. This Hall of Orchids was, in fact, not the least bit elegant. The atmosphere was gradually pushed towards a climax. In that second, Jing-Chi came in close to him, 2 jars of wine in hand, and passed one over, casually leaning against the railing. At the close proximity, Wuxia could smell the alcohol on him. Recalling that he had just glimpsed Zhou Zishu and this guy being 2 drunkards out of the corner of his eye, having unending you drink one I drink one fun, he could tell that the other had drank a little much. Jing-Chi peered down at the girl fiddling with the ruan and singing, gazing towards Jiangnan. Suddenly, he rapped against the carved railing, lowly singing along with the notes of her instrument. Don't hound me, hound my heart for being too fanciful. I am the willow of a crooked river, overlooking a pond. This person breaks off a branch, that person snaps off a branch. Feelings of love are temporary. His voice was as low as a whisper, singing the poem mournfully, yet it unexplainably held more driving vibrato than the woman's, his chanting of green as foliage and redder than fire and such more in line with the sound of her strings. When a close friend always incessantly sang, the overtones were also heard. Wuxi's ears abruptly tickled a bit, and he couldn't help but turn his head to him. What did you say? Jing-Chi raised his brows in a grin, pointing at the lass standing up and being mild-manneredly obedient. Have you seen her smile? Wuxia looked over, then nodded silently. The girl was no more than 15 or 16. There was a smile on her face, but it made one feel an indescribable sorrow. That red belt on her waist indicates that she's a girl that hasn't yet taken a customer. Her singing today wasn't bad, and a lot of folks have just thrown flowers at her. Seems she'll be able to fetch a good price for her initiation night, Jing-Chi explained vaguely. Ever since there's been beads of tears continuously dampening silk, there's been young noblemen bearing the burden of being kinder. Jing-Chi gently sighed, invoked by an unknowable space from either his previous life or the current one. It caused Wuxia to slightly jolt on the inside, and he couldn't help but reach out to clasp his shoulder. You drank too much. The other nodded. Yeah, drank too much, but once you do that, you just get drunk for a minute. What can be done about it? The ways of the world are as running water, transient life is one big dream. He suddenly broke free from Wuxia, picked up a flower, and forcefully threw it downwards. This prince fancies that young lady, he shouted with a raised voice. Saying so, he wobbled off downstairs, Ping An hurriedly following after him. Ch28, who was accompanying the drinking, stood up with some worry. Prince. Wuxia waved his hand towards her. It's fine. I'll go along to take a look. However, he didn't expect that within the effort it took to say that, Jing-Chi and Ping An would get submerged into the lobby's vast crowd, instantly leaving no trace behind. He frowned, slightly anxious on the inside. Afraid that the guy would have an accident while drunk, he motioned to his travel companion Ashenly, who used to be the best at bird spotting in their clan and had fantastic eyesight. Can you tell where Prince Nan Ning just went for me? He pulled him over to ask. Though Ashenly could strike the most cunning prey within dense forests, when it came to so many raucous people and the smells of cosmetics and alcohol assaulting the noise, he was also a bit dazed. Staring with a pair of copper bell-esque eyes for a long time, he then turned to look at Wuxia with some embarrassment. "Chaminette, this is really..." Wuxia sighed. "I'll go down and search for him." He was already sensitive to scents. The upstairs private room was fine, but once in the lobby, he detected the assailing stench of peculiarly sweet, greasy aromas mixed with the smells of all sorts of people. Choked by it, he sneezed, feeling a fit of nausea. When the brightly decorated women passed him to and fro, they all gave the handsome young man another look, with some even deliberately brushing up against him. He had no choice but to drag Ashenly over to use him as a shield, and in no time flat, the pitiful, 8 tall Nanjiang man had a face so red it looked purple, as if it could start dripping blood. The lady Jing said he fancied had already gone off stage right then, switched out for a different person going up. Not knowing where Jing had gotten to, Wuxia looked around every which way at a loss, brows creased. He truly didn't like this place much. All of a sudden, someone nearby grabbed him. Turning his head to look, he saw the one tugging at him was Pingan, who lifted his index finger straight up to let them know not to talk. "Come this way with me, Chaminette." Wuxia's head that was dizzied from the fragrance of the lobby immediately sobered up. He knew that Pingan was the most loyal, and with Jing having drunk too much and running about willy-nilly, he would have never tossed his master to the side to come over by his lonesome. Promptly understanding what had happened, he sent a meaningful look towards Ashenly, then quietly slipped away with Pingan along the base of the walls. As it happened, there was an extremely unremarkable door at the corner of the lobby. Beckoning, Pingan led the master-servant pair from there to the outside. As soon as they were out the door, cold wind promptly blew inside, making Wuxia quiver. "What's going on? What about your prince?" he thus asked Pingan. "The prince is waiting for you ahead, Chaminette. This way, please." Following their walk through a long, narrow, winding path, Pingan brought them into a small building. It appeared to be a downstairs waiting area for jadeite. Once they entered the room, Jing was seen inside, along with a middle-aged man dressed in rough cloth. That Prince Nanning, who legendarily played around and drank like mad, looked like he couldn't possibly be any more sober. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.